Hello everyone, this is Royale Miniatures here with a paint tutorial. In this video we're going to go over how to do metal. We're going to use a dark gray metallic and I'll be using a black ink wash. The model here is prepped from an earlier video. If you want to check that out, here's the link. This brush is a fine tip and I'm going to be using it because the model is relatively small. I'm just going to barely put the tip into the metallic paint, and you can see here just how much is applied on my fingernail, and I can tell that the paint is nice and thick, so it'll have good coverage. I'm going to be able to use this fine tip brush for all these different areas, so no need to switch brushes. This will get me through basically the entire model. Whenever I apply, I'll just make sure that the coat is spread out, that there aren't any clumpy or lumpy spots, and I want to make sure there's even coverage and not filling in any of the cracks. Now that all the metal is done, I'm going to move on to the inking stage, and at this stage I'm going to be making sure that I got everything, but overall looks good. When I touch the ink, all I do is just break the surface tension with the brush, and then I'll run it back over my finger, and I can see here that the ink will pool and then distribute evenly. Once I make brush contact with the model, I just make sure that the ink is leaching onto all the different surfaces, and all those little crevices are being highlighted by the ink because the ink will flow around it and then pool into itself. So I can go back over areas that I've just done and I can count on the ink absorbing any excess. So in this area here, I'm going over this really fine detail area, but all I need to do is just bring the pool of ink back into some of those crevices that already have collected ink, and then I'll be able to move all around the model just like this and then basically cover every little surface. A lot of the inking is dependent on what area you're going into. You can typically go in pretty heavy as long as you have a wide area of metal. So for instance, that wired area, I was able to impact and then move on. This area here is pretty confined, so I can hit with a pretty good ball of ink and then just distribute it. I know that it won't run off into anything else. That's also why I like to use a small brush, because you typically can't mess up as long as you start small. This belt buckle area, it's a pretty wide area to hit. All I do is just make initial contact, and then I can just move all the mass of the ink around, and then it will allow me to distribute as much as I need. Small little details like this are another reason why I like to use a small brush when I ink, especially a model that's this size. That way I can just move all throughout the entire model using the same brush, and especially once you get used to the brush that you're working with, you can really get in the feel for how the ink is responding and just how the brush can be so versatile. One last tip that I would want to share for small details that are very challenging to reach: just make sure that you approach them very slowly when you are first making contact. You can definitely use the little ball of ink on the tip method. Just make sure that when you're first making contact that you aren't too aggressive, because you don't want to have that little ball of ink leach onto another surface, because then that can cause a whole bunch of cleanup and kind of make a mess. And with that last brush stroke, the inking is done for this model. I have a couple areas that I was able to hit with the ink, the black on the bolter and also on the holster there, but I'll be hitting that with extra paint in another video. This video was extremely challenging to make because I wanted to get it as condensed as possible so you didn't have to watch a ton of painting. I do hope this helps you get a basic understanding of how you'll be able to use ink on your metals and make them look much more realistic and give them much more depth. I'm going to be doing more in-depth videos going forward, and I'm also working on some other collaborations with some other groups, so I'm very excited to post that content when I'm allowed to. Once again, hope this helps you, and I will see you guys next time.